So welcome to the $1 Million Career. We've never actually crossed paths in the DC insurance market, but I've obviously heard a lot about you, and we're going to talk about how to build a $1 million career in the insurance industry. So for our viewers out there, by way of introduction, Bob Farren is one of the legends in the Washington, DC insurance community, and I cannot do justice to your career, Bob. So I'm going to ask you to just spend a couple minutes and introduce yourself.
Well, certainly, and thank you for the opportunity to do this. I've been thinking about it a lot over the last few days and wanting to study and be prepared as I possibly can for our discussion. I was trying to figure out what can I do to bone up, and my wife told me, isn't the interview going to be about you? And I said, yeah. And she goes, well, if you don't know yourself by now, you're in trouble. So I'll certainly do the best I can. Legendary, I think I'm a little bit more humble. I've never put that word in the same sentence with me. I just try to do the right thing all the time. So sure. With that, you want me to go back to the beginning in terms of where I started?
Yeah, just kind of give us a couple minutes thumbnail sketch of your background so that the viewers understand who you are and what you've done. And then I'll get to some questions.
Okay. Well, I originally went to college to be a teacher, secondary ed, English, because I love the power of the written word. And when I got out of school back in '76, still hard to believe it's been that long, I was, my first job was working in the risk management department from an aerospace up on Long Island, where I was born and grew up in New York City. And I was fascinated by the principles of risk management and loss control. And I became the OSHA coordinator for Grumman. And I really enjoyed the responsibility of trying to take care of all the good people that were working in the plant where I worked, which was on the E2C Hawkeye for all you Navy people out there. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Helping to discover the hazards and the perils and everything else that was in the workplace environment, never having that appreciation for it, and having people get hurt on the job. I just got more and more immersed in it until such time, after 4.5 years, I was recruited to an insurance company. I happen to still think it's one of the best insurance companies out there, Chubb and Son. And I went into the Marine department, and started off in the loss control department, and within a year, I was recruited into the Marine department, and we did inland marine, commercial hull, and yacht, and I loved it, and I loved the freedom of form that Marine gives you, as opposed to the structure of property and casualty, which is much more filed and much more regulated. And that was my first contact with Lloyd's of London, the syndication of insurance, where you can literally manuscript a policy to fit the wants and needs of an insurance client. And I truly enjoyed that and had a good career with Chubb in the time that I was there in Long Island, and then down in Tampa, and then back up to New York City, and then back to Long Island. Then I was recruited to a Japanese insurance company to be their national manager for Marine, Yasuda Fire Marine. They used McGee Insurance as their front for taking care of all the Japanese national companies in the US. So I got exposed to Honda and Nissan and so forth. And that was a reward in its own. And then I got recruited back to Chubb after 5.5 years working in the World Trade Center in New York. They wanted me to come into the property and casualty department. So I did do that. And I learned everything that would complement the Marine approach, where it was really very holistic, having the risk management loss control background, the Marine and the independent of thought department is what I used to call it, and the commercial lines. property and casualty. And I was doing large line. I graduated over the years into large lines, working with the carriers that I did, again, Chubb, Zurich, and Cigna. And then I was recruited by Marsh McLennan to DC to work with engineered lines 25 years ago. And loved it, but I had a great manager of the branch who encouraged the personal development of everybody working there. One of the best environments I ever worked in. Marsh, I happen to think, is a great company. And I was given the opportunity to do what I was recruited for, but also to chase the sports and entertainment insurance dollar. And consequently, I had success with a couple of the local teams of the Washington Redskins, as they were known then, and then Capitals, Capital One Arena, Kennedy Center, Ravens. I had a very fun aspect of my career, and then it graduated into Shakespeare Theater, Arena Stage, and consulting with other companies, and then got recruited to be assistant national manager at Willis to start their national sports and entertainment practice. And I loved every second of it. I feel very fortunate to have had the career up until now where I'm now managing the nonprofit practice for a local agency here in Northern Virginia that has given me carte blanche that if I have a P&C client that the agency can make money with, then I can pursue it. But my focus now is nonprofit. And I like to take the principles that I learned along the way, the mentors, the teachers. I had the good fortune of being involved in running the Marine Training School at Chubb and the training at Marsh for the DC and Baltimore offices. And it was just great because it scratched the itch of going to college to be a teacher. At the same time, doing something that I was introduced to, Rob, when I was a kid, and that was my dad's insurance agent. And even though he was life insurance, he left an indelible impression on me because of his philosophy. And I remember having some great conversations with him in my teens where he just loved the heck out of protecting people. And one of the driving principles I've had throughout my career is I've always tried to be knowledgeable about what it is I was doing. And if I didn't know it when a question was posed, to make sure that I knew where to go to get the answer in the event that I didn't know the answer. And that has served me very well with my clients. I've never lost a client for cause. That's the thing I'm most proud of in my career. Certainly not looking to start now at this point in my career, but I feel like I'm having my cake and eating it too. And yes, I've had a good career, good lifestyle. Yes, as mentioned in insurance, you can make some very good money. You got to be smart in how you choose your path. But I'm at the point now where, because I'm a planner and I like to cross some T's and dotting I's, that now my focus is more legacy than it is lifestyle. And amazingly, insurance allows me to do that too. If you want more than that, you're going to have to wait for the movie, Rob.
It's okay. Now I hear there's a movie in the mix. So, hey, so, you know, the target audience for our show is really the younger generation. That's the reason why I do the show. And I try and, help people plan, build, and supercharge their careers in whatever industry they choose. It happens to be, I'm a recruiting expert in insurance. So I know a lot about insurance, but this show is really for, anybody out there who wants to build $1 million career. So I've always felt like the secret to building, a successful or $1 million career is to do something that you're passionate about. So I'm kind of curious, you kind of touched on it, but what is it about insurance that you're so passionate about? Because it seems like it's a vocation, not even a career for you. It's like a calling from the force. So explain that a little bit, particularly to our younger generation. What is it about insurance that has you so fired up still after all these years?
Couple of things, and we chatted on it in our last discussion, but my father had a profound influence on me. He was a thinker, and he got me applying that kind of approach to my life. In that he said, "There's three kinds of people out there, Bob. Those that make things happen, those that watch things happen, and those that go, 'What happened?'" And that was impressed upon me to the extent that I wanted to be somebody that makes things happen. I also, because I was a baseball player, a team player, I love team sports, that I knew if and my vocation at the time was to be a teacher. I knew that if I applied what it is I was learning and what I was exposed to, that I knew I could scratch the teaching itch in the insurance world. And I'm proud to say that whether somebody's with me 5 minutes are going to be better for the experience, because I like making people better, smarter, and more successful than they were the day I met them. And I don't care what title or what experience they have. In fact, with the training schools that I had and all the people over the years that I've hired and recruited into insurance, um, what I looked for was the passion and the energy, because it's not for everybody.
Right, right.
Even though it sounds like it is hard work, but if you like or love what you do, it becomes less like work. And but it's really rewarding, because even though I was on the commercial side and not the personal side, I love taking care of people and my clients, and that is my passion. I want them to know.
Mhm.
I was with a client prospect yesterday. I said, "You guys cannot afford all the insurance I can sell you, but that's not my job. My job is to make you smarter on your insurance decisions and help you make the smartest decision possible." And that's what I try to focus on, especially if you're a startup. You can't buy everything you truly need, so you need to plan it. And over the years, I think I've become pretty good at that.
Yeah,
And at least, given the fact that most of my clients have all given me referrals that I've built upon, that my foundation was solid, and the multi-story building I got on that foundation is a really diverse and, I think, interesting one. I'm
yeah,
proud to say that my clients usually become my personal friends as well. So that's a nice way to live, work, and play.
yeah,
Insurance is a noble profession, Rob, as I know you know, and I still think there's a strong place for it in the world today, because it is so relationship driven. And I
yeah.
love meeting people. I told you before, if I'll talk to a wall if I think it's listening. So as long as somebody is willing to learn, because that scratches the itch of teaching, which I originally went to college for,
Mhm.
and to do something that's rewarding, where you know you're helping to protect a business and the people in that business, I really truly feel like I've got my cake and eating it too.
Yeah. So if I'm a young person out there and I'm thinking to myself, um, you know, uh, I'd like to make some money, but at the same time, I'd like to really, enjoy what I'm doing, um, enjoy connecting with people. So how do people make money in insurance? I mean, if I'm a young guy or a gal and I'm thinking, assuming it's interesting, how do how do you actually make money? Kind of walk people through, particularly as an insurance sales professional, as you've been. How does the model work? How do you make money? How do you create wealth? All that sort of stuff.
Sure. I wish I could say I was smart enough to know that when I started. I wasn't. I learned it along the way from people I became close with, that respected, and that actually mentored me. And um, the series of events that helped me decide I wanted to get into sales as opposed to continuing to climb the corporate ladder into bigger and more senior management positions was actually quite simple. When I was working in New York City, I had an underwriter who I became very good friends with still to this day, that I used to go out on calls with because I provided the technical expertise to back up what it is he was trying to sell. He just didn't have the background to speak in depth. So we had a lot of success together on joint calls. One of the building blocks of that approach, and going somewhere, I'm not rambling, was that I wanted to go to an insurance company that had a good training program. I did my
Yeah,
homework.
good training.
And you gotta learn your craft, and it is a craft. That's a large part of the reason we're happy to be at Chubb, because they had a tremendous commitment to educating their people. So after dozens of times going out with my friend, one day he couldn't make an appointment. And he asked me, and I said, okay, we're going to reschedule. And he goes, no, I want you to go on the appointment anyway. So I was nervous because I never looked at it from the sales perspective. And so I went on the call. It was the first introduction, so there was no track record of my buddy with the client. And I did land the account. And that got me thinking. It was a large electric utility account. And made him a lot of money, and he wasn't even there. And that got me thinking, am I on the right side of the fence here? And I decided then to try my hand on looking at things from the sales perspective, because yes, you can make good money in insurance, either through senior management positions where you get options on stock and equity and so forth, or sales. So I took the gamble. I was still young enough. The kids were still young enough that I could afford to trip and stumble if I failed. Because it is a little scary when you're starting to do something new in your mid-career. So that was why I left New York, from the safety and the convenience and the security of the underwriting world, in '96, and I came down to DC and built a sales practice. I didn't know anybody here other than my friends at Marsh, and they gave me the opportunity to build it, and the subsequent opportunities I've had since that led me to believe that I could do more than just underwrite a business, that I could actually sell to that business. And I've never looked back. I have made a lot of good money in my career. I never made, honestly, $1 million in a year, but I have over the course of the career, and then some, which was surprising, because back in '76, when I graduated college, my first job was $10,000 a year when I was working at Grumman. Never realizing how the sky was the limit, and that I had some pretty good success in chasing it. So yeah, I think insurance, whether you're on the underwriting side or the sales side, but especially the sales side, can be a very rewarding and lucrative career that you can actually have a lot of fun in if you love meeting.
Yeah,
Rob?
it always seemed to me that it's unbelievable how much some people make in a year, even in insurance sales. I mean, there's people, as you know, in the Washington, D.C. area that work for some of the big firms that make over $1 million a year selling insurance. Now, it doesn't happen in year one, but tell us about some of the critical success factors that an individual would have to get to that level, to be what I would call an elite insurance sales guy or saleswoman? What are some of those traits that they would have to have?
Well, I would say first and foremost is humility, because I never thought of myself in that way. I just want I could earn the trust of my clients if they had to made and I had a network relationship that I could tap into that could give me the answers. So, and that comes from my sports background, being on part of a team. I always looked at insurance as three components. You've got the underwriter, then the producer, and the claims guy. And yeah, I'm out front and I'm representing something to work in a certain manner. The underwriter is putting my words in on paper so that in theory it's supposed to work that way. However, if a claim occurs, claims guy is not interpreting what it is me and the underwriter put together, or me as the producer sold to my client, then I'm in trouble. I'm going to get a lousy reputation, and consequently, I won't have integrity, which is one of the things that I value the most of what I would call a skill or a trait, in that I don't lie, I don't BS, I never have, I never will, because you can't earn trust if you do that. If I make mistakes or screwed up to some degree, I always told the clients what it is that happened and why, and what my plan was for fixing it. And that's because I've always associated myself with good underwriters and good claims people. And if you're going in it solely for the money and focusing only on sales, yeah, if you have a natural tendency to sell, you probably can do pretty good. But I dare say you'll do better if you've got underwriters at certain good companies and get to know their respective claims
Yeah.
people. That, I think, is a better recipe for success.
Right. So that kind of leads me into my next topic. Yeah. So if I understand you correctly, Bob, so you're saying that some of the skills and attributes that you have to have is you have to be a trustworthy person. You have to be a team player working with the internal, your internal customers, i.e. claims people, account managers, account executives, underwriters. And you touched on something that I find fascinating too. You need the support of the underwriters and account managers and the claims people. So what would you say about people that try and make a lot of money starting out with a small mom and pop insurance agency, ABC insurance agency, Mr. and Mrs. Jones insurance agency, husband, wife, there's maybe 3 or 4 people in the office. Is that just a no-go for most people? Because it sounds like you're counseling people that if you're going to get involved with insurance, get with a company that has some infrastructure that can support you in the way of underwriting, claims, and account management. So maybe you could talk a little bit about working small mom and pop versus big national broker such as you did, like Willis and Marsh out there.
Sure. I'm not saying my way is the way for everybody else. It didn't work out that way, and it became an easier path for me when I realized what I wanted to do the rest of my career. With that being said, I believe very strongly in education. So I wanted to learn in the best
Yep.
environment, and what I'll call the alphabets or the big brokers give you the best opportunity, as well as the big underwriters. And then you take what you've learned and apply it so that whatever your niche is in terms of sales on the carrier side or the production side, you've got the foundation upon which you build your house. It doesn't mean you can't be successful in insurance if you go straight into sales, but I wasn't a natural salesman. I had to take the skills of learning people or liking people, meeting as many people, because I love the networking aspect of the job. I love the journey that puts you on, but also having the confidence to not be crushed with loss of a sale or the defeat that has. And that's
Yes.
where I think my sports background helped me because we didn't, all the sports I played, we didn't win every game. Overall, I had success that we won most of them. We've had the opportunity to be national champions and local champions and tournament champions. So it's a nice feeling. And
Yeah.
but at the same time, somebody has on. I'll use my favorite sport, baseball, and baseball analogy. Somebody has to hit the home run. Somebody hits the singles. Somebody steals the base, and
Yeah.
others get our RBI guys. I was an RBI guy. The table was set with base runners. I was pretty good at driving them in. Occasionally I get a home run to experience that thrill because it is fun. But I wasn't consistent that way. So I learned what I was able to do and honed those skills. And it's easier to do that in insurance when there's such a field of diversity in it's what kind of sales do you want? You want to do commercial property and casualty or marine or life or whatever. It doesn't matter. If you become as smart as you are capable and then supplement what you don't know, like I've said several times here, supplement what you don't know with a network that will help represent you
Yeah.
as leader and help people make their decisions. That to me, with
Yeah.
integrity, being forthright, being transparent is the best, is my recipe for giving advice to. And I've had a lot of people that I trained that came right out of school or other careers earlier in their lives that went on to some pretty good success in insurance and outside of insurance. And I'm very proud of that.
Yeah. No, I think that, you know, you mentioned a couple of things like sports backgrounds. I played basketball in college. I played competitive sports my entire life. I still play competitive sports as old as I am. And I've always found that some of the best sales producer candidates that I've found for my clients had really two of the things that you said: a competitive sports background, men and women. I placed a woman here about 2 weeks ago, soccer player in college. I'm very, very competitive. And the other one is people that have a good network, like centers of influence, like maybe in the construction industry or maybe in the nonprofits. But I've taken people that have never sold insurance before that had those two things: sports background and a good local network. They go to a bigger company and they're sales trained. Very, very successful people. So
Well, it's
very,
also
very interesting.
to that very point, Rob, sports, and if you're successful in it, you usually have lateral or horizontal success as well with the people that you meet on the way.
Yeah.
And I believe, male or female, it is a fraternity, and people
Yeah.
gravitate to one another if they've got that commonality between whoever they are. You might like painting the wall blue, and I might like painting the wall red. But if we can talk sports, it's a great way to start the foundation of getting to know one another. And I didn't know it at the time. That was just me. I love talking sports, and especially going back to my days growing up in the shadow of Yankee Stadium in New York City. Now it's become more nostalgia than time, but people to that, and I feel very, very blessed to have had the opportunity to do what I did in the manner in which I did it. And I'll never stop. I'll never stop.
Yeah, I think that regarding sports, as you know, the key to consultative selling is establishing rapport and establishing a relationship with somebody. I've always felt like the best way to do that is to establish common ground with the other person. And a great way to do that is talking about sports. Oh yeah, I played high school baseball, high school basketball, high school football. As you said, it is sort of a fraternity. So I always counsel people, and I do a lot of coaching and mentoring of high schoolers and college kids. I always tell them, well, boy, if you can get involved in competitive sports, it'll set you up for future success. And I think particularly in insurance, particularly insurance sales, there's a lot of people that have sports backgrounds competitive sports backgrounds that do really well in insurance sales. I can't really explain it, but I think it's maybe being able to overcome adversity, overcome rejection, because as you know, when you're selling insurance, you get a lot of rejection. You got to be able to handle it. It's like
Well,
getting punched in the mouth as a boxer or blindside
you,
tackled in football. You gotta be able to bounce back, right?
you have to know yourself well enough to know that you get knocked down, that learn from what knocked you down on how to avoid it or protect yourself against it happening again, and get right back up and running that sweep to the left side, or being smart enough to realize, yeah, you want to be a home run hitter because it's fun and everybody likes the home run hitters. But if you're a singles hitter, if you don't make that adjustment, you're not going to make it, even in sports. You got to know yourself and you got to
Yeah,
be confident. And if you're not, you're stacking the odds against you. Stay within yourself, expand vertically or horizontally where you need to, but have passion about what you're doing and be ethical in the process. And I believe success will find you even more so than you will find success,
yeah.
because people, especially in business, want to be with winners. And I coached for
Yes.
26 years. I played 2 years in the farm system of a major league team. And that's when I got invited to try out for two expansion teams that came into the Major League Baseball back in the early 70s, that's when I realized I wasn't going anywhere. But I knew in terms of being a player, but I knew I wanted to be around sports and entertainment, the
Yeah, there you go.
concerts and all of that. So I couldn't play it, but it's a longer lasting career if you get to insure it or help protect those organizations that you tried to play for in concept, and you can't, but being close to them, it's a longer career that way, and it's just as
Yeah.
much fun. And I'm pleased and proud of a lot of the celebrity types that play ball that I got to know, that have maintained contact with 42 years later. I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't know it worked like that, but I love that
Yeah.
it did. And I love sharing that with my trainees or people that are looking for more or trying to find that direction. Conversations like this, Rob, I love having, especially with people in their 20s and 30s and even the 40s that are trying to find that direction, because
Sure.
there's a
Sure.
lot more distraction out there today than when you and I got started. And maybe it is a little bit more difficult, but it is just as rewarding once you figure out what your path is going to be. You
Yeah.
don't have to know it at the start, but you have to be willing to try new things.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what you said, uh, aligning yourself with an industry that you are very interested in, that you're comfortable in, that you could throw your heart and soul into, as in your case, sports and entertainment. But for somebody else, it may be non-government organizations, or maybe transportation, railroads, it may be construction, it could be healthcare. But I found that the people that align themselves with specific industries and become a subject matter expert, particularly in sales, are the most successful ones. Um, I also want to ask you another question too. So for all the young people out there who are listening and are thinking to themselves now, this sounds really interesting, this insurance. I never thought of insurance. I was thinking about finance or technology, and you're thinking, this insurance sounds pretty interesting. What sort of advice would you give somebody, let's say a couple of years out of school, that wants to get involved with insurance? There's all different pathways into the insurance industry. Can you just give them a few potential career paths that would lead them to success and possibly even $1 million career?
Sure. I believe there are two ways to do it. One, as I addressed earlier, with the big boys, because the tricks of the trade that I learned working at, and I mean this in a positive way, because insurance is a noble industry. But what I learned working at the big companies, now that I'm working with a small regional agency, I'm applying what it is that happened with the big accounts to the small to medium sized people or companies that I work with now. And knowing how the game is played is everything. So that's one way to go from the corporate world and back into the smaller world. If you're prepared, you will succeed whether you like it or not. I truly believe that. The other or second approach is if you want to start off in a small family agency or a local agency, try to find one that encourages the learning experience. And by that, I don't mean license training or taking an insurance course that gives you a few letters afterwards. Yes, they are important, but everybody that's in those classrooms are there for a reason, and that's to either get a certificate or a license. But you don't get the value of networking. So go working for an agency that will promote the networking. That to me is where the key to success is. If you are a people person and you are smart enough to learn what you don't know and go and become an expert on what you do know. For example, I'm one of those nudniks out there that I read the policy. I love talking to my clients and or my competition on coverage. I read and understand coverage. And I can usually tell within 10, 15 minutes of working with a prospect while I'm trying to earn that trust, if they really know what they're talking about or think that they know what they're talking about. And if you can identify that, you're on your way before you even realize. Gesundheit, that was a sneeze. But you have to be perceptive. You have to learn on the fly. You have to know what you're talking about. And since most companies, everybody taught coverage when I was starting out, when you were starting out, Rob. But unfortunately, companies are not teaching their people the way they were when you and I were coming up. So you have to be a little bit more self-motivated to put another couple of tools into your tool chest, the success tool chest, so that you can overcome the fact that education isn't what it used to be, but it's still valuable. To me, given my focus of wanting to be a teacher, education is the foundation to a successful insurance career of any kind.
Right, right. And you said any kind. So just for edification amongst my viewers, some of the viewers may not be familiar, with insurance. So the way I see this, there's several different types of insurance too that a young person could go into. The obvious one is life insurance. One that you're involved in, Bob, is property and casualty, which is commercial lines and personal lines. And then there's the employee benefits side of the business, the group health insurance and disability. So the way I've always seen it is those are four different insurance sectors that one could go into, and you're in commercial lines. Could you just talk a little bit about the difference between commercial lines and personal lines, maybe?
To me, because I've never done personal lines or employee benefits, I've always brought them in and then introduced my clients once I won them on the PNC side to my colleagues that had that expertise, so that it was looking like it was a team approach. That can work if you, because you don't want to refer people that don't know what they're talking about. So always
Right.
refer people who are as smart about their approach as you are, because then the team approach works. But I think it comes down to the same principles. Know what you're talking about. Get smart about what you're talking about, and then find that right environment that allows you to succeed. I'm not avoiding your question, Rob. It's just that it's a function of style, as I call it, that because PNC isn't cut out for everybody. Do you want small to medium sized PNC, or do you want the mega account PNC? You got to know what your comfort level is. I liked working on the big stuff at the start. I got into by knowing, and I enjoyed the stress of insuring nuclear power plants and multi-$100 million accounts, but taking what it is I learned and applying it to the small to medium size. It's a great way account. That's a great way for the future underwriters that you'll
Yeah.
work with if you're in sales, that they'll know and trust you that you know what you're talking about and be more inclined to cut you a break or make a deal. Because when I had the good fortune of learning in Lower Manhattan, back in the days when insurance was done on an insurance napkin, your word is your
Yeah.
bond. You shake your hand and you better do what you say. Because if you don't, that word gets around real fast and it's very difficult to overcome. Very
Yeah, I
difficult to
know.
overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an insurance recruiter and I specialize in just Washington, DC. So I definitely get what you're talking about. You make a mistake, everybody knows about it. Yeah, and yeah, I've always kind of figured that, or based upon all of our recruitments, employee benefits is a lot different than property and casualty, particularly commercial lines, because employee benefits, that segment is usually based upon how many employees a company has, whether it's got, two employees to 50 employees is like small market, 50 to 500 employees is like mid market, and then companies with 500 employees and more, 1,000 employees, several thousand, Fortune 500, that's obviously large. And it seems like when people sell employee benefits, that's how that market is segmented without regards to industry. Whereas property and casualty and commercial lines, which I believe is much more interesting, that's really segmented by industry. And most of the successful people are subject matter experts in, like you said, sports and entertainment, transportation, construction. So I think my advice, and tell me if you agree with this, is for somebody that really has a passion for a specific industry like construction or transportation, nonprofits, healthcare, maybe they would want to go into more commercial lines, whereas somebody that just really was industry agnostic, wanted to be a generalist, maybe they would sell employee benefits. Is that a
Well, if
fair
you want,
analogy, you think?
yeah, I think it's a bullseye, because if you know yourself and know what your appetite for risk is relative to your career, then you find that role again, like being a home run hitter or a singles hitter on a successful team, so that you can make your contribution to the success of the overall team, agency or brokerage or carrier that
Yeah,
you're with, because not everybody can do everything. But if you find that niche that you are comfortable with and confident with, and don't hop around every 2 to 3 years, because one thing that does hurt is people listen to what I call promotions of the minute, where they accept a short-term promotion where the other people promoting you get the benefit of bringing you on the team, but they don't have a long-term plan for you. Align yourself with people that truly are vested in you and the potential for success. It's all going to come down to you, but that's why sales is usually the most lucrative, because it also has the most risk. You are really putting, again, it's, as I said earlier, it's not for everybody. But if you think you have that itch, try to find a way to scratch it, because it can be developed, it can be learned. I'm not a quitter, but one thing that motivates me is when people tell me I can't do something, because
yeah,
if you do it, you reap the reward and the benefit. If you don't, well, nobody thought you were going to do it anyway. So you can't lose.
no, I think you're right. You said something before, which is very interesting. When I recruit people for whatever position, and my recruiters do, we look for one thing. We look for winners. We want winners. My clients want winners, because you know what? My clients are winners. They win. And I can't really explain what a winner is, but I know it when I see it. It's like professional sports teams. I tell really good candidates, be careful who you switch jobs and go work for, because you're exchanging a known for an unknown. Make sure that unknown, when you jump ship, is a winner. And you and I know who the winners are in the DC market. We're not going to mention any names, but there are a handful of firms that I believe are just winners.
Yeah.
They're winners. and there's a lot of losers out there. So you got to do your due diligence, and that's why you want to use a recruiter too, because a guy like me knows everybody. I know the winners and the losers. So
Absolutely. And
I,
and to that very point, Rob, back to what you and I both touched on is having that network. And that's why
yeah,
joining mixers or Zoom meetings or business networking clubs, it accomplishes several goals. One, you get to focus on the area of expertise that you want to represent, because I'm sorry, I've rarely met the individual who's an expert in everything. And if
yeah,
somebody claims they're expert in everything, I instantly become suspicious. I'm more interested in the person that represents a team. Again, having
yeah,
personal success with the team concept. The other thing is having that network. There's nothing that makes people are going to value more if you refer somebody to somebody else and you don't get anything out of it. People remember that even in this day and age. So you got to be willing to give every single resource that you represent for the benefit of your client. I truly believe if you do that, and this is what I've taught in the training classes that I've had the good fortune to run or be invited to be a guest speaker, and is give all your resources are available. Don't score keep. You cannot score keep, because you never know when it's going to come back at you, or when somebody remembers something you said a few years ago on a certain topic. You just never know where it's going to come from. But if you're if you're a lighthouse in the storm, if you're rock solid and people know they can count on you, and you ask a question and you don't bill them for the answer, they will come to respect you for that. And that's always been the way I've tried to manage myself.
yeah. No, so
And
th- I took,
I'll share one other thing, Rob, that you just reminded me of. When I got a
go ahead.
promotion, when I was on the carrier side, to relocate, which at the time my family was growing and we were getting established, it was more money, but I turned it down because I was learning that I loved the client interaction. As much as I was enjoying, and I was clearly on a career path of management, and in my career, 38 of my 42 years, I was in management to various degrees. I stayed in the environment where I had the direct interaction with the client, because the client, by their behavior and by the level of their success and what they're doing, is what the carrier will ultimately adjust to, or the carrier is going to go out of business. So
Yeah, right.
you just got to find your niche.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm going to wrap things up here. I really appreciate you spending the time to have this important conversation. It's been very informative, inspiring, actually. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I took some notes, and just to kind of summarize or attempt to summarize, you jump in at any point. But what I'm hearing is, particularly for the younger generation, the young people either thinking about or already have jumped into the deep end of the insurance pool, if you will. Some of the important things, training, make sure that you get with an organization that has resources and that can provide really good training. Particularly as a salesperson, you've got to be trustworthy. You've got to have integrity, got to be transparent. Sports background helps, because you got that competition and ability to overcome adversity. Develop a network, particularly if you're on the commercial line side, because you're focused on an industry. Your clients expect you to be a subject matter expert. So if you're selling construction, if you're specializing in construction in the insurance sales side, join all your construction industries, attend conferences. We talked about big brokers versus small mom and pops. It really depends. As you said, you could start out with a big broker and then end up with a small regional broker, because you've got that, knowledge base and experience that you can be deadly going after smaller fish, because your competition is probably not as sophisticated as you are. And the other side of the same coin would be, maybe you could start out with a small, family-owned agency. We like to call them mom and pops, 20 to 25 people, maybe less. But if you do that, make sure that they encourage and provide you with opportunities to network, to build your centers of influence, build your networking. So then we talked a little bit about the difference between commercial lines, personal lines, property casualty, employee benefits. So I'm going to end that with you. But before you leave, if you had one thing to tell a young insurance professional, just graduated from college, they're doing interviews, they've got their first job with a big broker down in K Street in DC, what's the one piece of advice that you would give that person that really wants to build $1 million career?
That is not a simple answer, but I will attempt to answer it because I'm
You didn't think I was going to
smiling.
let you off easy, did you, Bob?
I've truly enjoyed this, and I'm prepared to go another 6 hours if you want. But that is to the point of what I'm saying. You've got to be self-confident enough that my advice is, when you're talking to somebody, do it in a manner in which they think that you really enjoy what you're doing. In other words,
Got it.
have fun, because it's contagious and people will be more want to do business with you if they think you love what you're doing, as opposed to you're just going through the motions. Don't be
Yeah.
shy. Don't be shy about it being emotional, because insurance is very personal, even if you're putting together a program for a business. They want to see that you're human and that you know what you're talking about, and that more importantly, you will protect them. If you do those three things combined, I don't see how you can fail.
So just to put a fine point on that. So if I'm the guy, if I'm 30 years younger, I'm just out of college and I'm looking to get involved with insurance, and I'm thinking, I really like the construction. I really like the construction business, cranes and tractors and people building buildings. I want to be a construction expert. I want to own the construction sector. And I got a sports background. Do I have a pretty good chance of building and growing $1 million career over a long period of time?
I would say yes, to a degree or a factor of maybe 5 or 10, because sports, you're going to meet a lot of people. But they're going to be more short-term than usually long-term. Construction, and I'll expand that to development, real estate or otherwise, you're going to meet a lot of people, but you're going to know them for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
And if you get associated with the right people, you can make a career on that just alone. Because one thing about contractors, if you're good at what you do, they'll bring you along for the ride. If you're not, your business isn't going to make it, or isn't going to be around a very long period of time. Again, it comes back down to who you are.
Got it.
But if you come across confident, people will pick up on it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. If you can figure out who you are and what you want to do, what gets you excited, what industry gets you excited, what part of the industry you want to be in. Yeah, I totally agree that you can make a lot of money. You could build a book of business, create significant wealth for yourself, and have a great time. I think insurance is a lot of fun. So
when I've done training classes, Rob, I've told them I have the 2 P's. I look for people, especially an audience that is unsure of whether insurance is for them. If somebody has passion and somebody essentially wants to play in terms of learning how to play the game, I truly believe I can make them better. Like I said at the beginning of this call, 5 minutes of 5 years, whatever it is they ultimately wind up doing, I will help them be that much more prepared for going after a career in insurance, which I still think is the most noble profession in this country. It's still great, and it's not going away.
Yeah, exactly. Bob Farren, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll talk off camera here. But I really appreciate you coming on the show.